Hello viewers, this is Dr. Maggie. Once again I'm back with the Dual Podcast, and this time we have an interesting topic. It's about attraction, love and infatuation. Is it love or is it infatuation? Statistics have shown that a lot of young people are depressed and some even are committing suicide because of problems in their relationships. And mental health issues and depression is very high in that group. So today, I think this topic, guys, very, very important. We have a special guest here, and she will introduce herself. Welcome.
Thank you, Doc, and thank you for having me here again. It's a pleasure to be here once again. Hi, everyone. My name is Delin. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm also a trauma and attachment therapist, and I'm happy to talk about this conversation because it's something that most of us experience, but we don't really understand the dynamics around it. So sit back, relax, and let us break this down.
So Delin, love and infatuation, that is all attraction. Tell us the difference. There are people who meet somebody for 1 month and already they said, I've fallen in love, this is Mr. Right, I want to get married. After some time you find they are divorcing. What's the difference between love and infatuation?
Okay, well, I think this is a very timely conversation, especially going by the rates of, relationship patterns we are seeing all over. And those two terms, ideally, many times, we tend to use them interchangeably without really understanding what they mean. But if I'm to describe what love is, in the beginning, love always begins as a feeling of attraction or affection or connection, and it grows over time to something that's consistent. It takes time. Infatuation, on the other hand, is very intense. It elicits strong emotions such that ultimately it tends to trigger the fear of rejection or the fear of abandonment. So many times we get stuck in between such that we don't know whether we're in love or whether we're just infatuated with someone.
I thought, Delin, when apart from the fear and anxiety, but the infatuation, there's a chemistry, something. You see somebody and your heart starts beating fast and your dopamine levels go high and you want to be with them. There's also some chemical change in the body. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could that be, or could it be also to do with lust? Because I've heard some people say that lust comes in.
Now, allow me to answer that question this way. So ideally, love takes time.
Yeah.
It's consistent and it feels safe and it feels calm. Infatuation, on the other end, it tends to bring out very strong emotions, sometimes that, make someone overly dependent on the other person. It's not safe, and we can say it's anxiety based because of the underlying fear around it, on the anxiety around it.
So Delin, as we grow up, we're born in our families, we grow up, then at some point you're attracted to somebody. Different people are attracted to different people. Yeah. Some of it is infatuation, others is, whatever. What determines whom you are attracted to? Or what you are attracted to?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a very good question, and it's something most of us don't really take time to think about. But ideally, our environment plays a huge role when it comes to who we are drawn to. And by that I mean primarily our formative years, that is our childhood. It shapes who we are drawn to because of the experiences that we learn while growing up. If you grow up in a safe and secure environment, you're likely to choose healthier relationship dynamics or healthier partners. And sometimes, so you realize as you progress throughout in life, so you tend to gravitate more towards what feels familiar because of the childhood blueprint that we grow up interacting with.
But I know so many people who grew up in a family where they've never seen the father hug the mother. They've never seen the father even tell the mother, I love you, and vice versa. And some even grew up where there are constant quarrel and noise. Yeah, how does that affect children when they grow up?
Yeah, that's true. Ideally, you realize children learn behavior by observation. And just as you're saying, if a child grows up in an environment where they're constantly witnessing violence, inconsistency, it causes a shift internally for them. And so as long as they are consistently in that environment, that kind of dynamic is reinforced. And
Okay.
so when they become adults, they're likely to gravitate towards adults or partners who exhibit some of these characteristics because of what they saw growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So parents have a role to play, and our children watch us. Yeah, yeah. Now, so we are looking at childhood influence by the parents. What of character? Because I'm trying to see why people are diverse in the way they behave or handle relationships. The character. How
Right.
yes.
So with character, then we are leaning more now towards the personality aspect. And personality is acquired in two ways. You know, we say it's acquired in two ways: nature or nurture. Nature are the traits we are born with. These are the traits we inherit from our parents. Many times we hear people say, ana behave kama mama
Kama
yake,
mama yake.
anatembea kama baba yake, you know. These are examples of the traits we acquire from our parents. And then nurture, on the other end, has everything to do with the environment. The behaviors we acquire by virtue of the environmental interaction among the people around us. And of course, this is also through learned behavior. When you spend a lot of time in a certain environment, it reinforces that behavior. And all these things now play part of our personality.
So I can see it starting from childhood, you're growing up, then you become a teenager. What are other factors influence the way we relate to each other?
To each other.
Yeah.
Also values and personal beliefs. And this has to do with culture. Culture also plays a role when it comes to how we view relationships and how we interact with people. We know of cultures where things like, say, divorce are not permissible. And in such kind of cultures, when people get into relationships, then the baseline is always, I am not supposed to divorce. So sadly, regardless of what they are going through in relationships, they tend to, you know, not know how to navigate that because of culture. And sometimes also things like stigma. Still, because of culture, we know of cultures where, you know, being single is seen as there's a stereotype around being single, being unmarried. And these are some of the things that put a lot of pressure on young people, such that they find themselves in unhealthy relationships where, because of culture, because of family expectations. Yeah.
And there are cultures where they actually force you to get married. It could be an arranged marriage or just pressure from the parents that you must get married.
Right.
How is that likely to affect them, I imagine?
That's true. That's a very significant aspect as far as culture is concerned. And whereas there are certain communities that practice arranged marriages. But then you see, culture in itself, culture is a way of life. And so as long as you're around such a dynamic, then it also forms part of your values and your beliefs. You know, it becomes something that you embody fully. And likely, even as you progress into adulthood, it's something that you still embody, and it becomes now, you know, part of your value system. Some of which sometimes you can even pass it on to your children, the generational patterns. So it takes a lot of personal experiences also, or removing ourselves from certain environments to get to experience different. But as long as we are in an environment that reinforces some behavior, we only operate from that as a reference point when it comes to the kind of partners we choose.
Yeah. Now, I've heard of stories where the in-laws, the mothers-in-law or the fathers-in-law will insist, you must marry a wealthy person. Or when you get there, make sure you start making money. You've heard those stories. Yeah. What do you think of that in terms of influencing or encouraging young people to get married?
Wow, that's very interesting because we see this a lot, and it all boils down to value systems. You know, value systems really inform or they're the motivation behind the reasons we get into relationships. And nowadays we see, and maybe not even nowadays, over the years, we see there are different reasons why people get into relationships.
Yeah.
The motivation surrounding being in a relationship is always different for everyone. For some people, it's because of stability. They're looking for stability. For some people, it's maybe because of love. For some people, maybe because it was an arranged marriage. For some people, because maybe they don't have any way out. For some people, it's because they feel they're ready to marry or to get married. For some people, they feel they're financially stable to afford a family. So the reasons and the motivations are endless.
Diverse. They're endless.
Right.
Now, fewer young people, statistics have shown that fewer young people are getting married right now than 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And especially you look at the Gen Zs and millennials.
Yeah.
What do you think are the factors why our young people are not getting married?
Wow, that's an interesting question, but also a very good observation.
Yes.
And it's true, when we look at the statistics in terms of marriage, we're seeing marriage rates are significantly dropping. Every day, more people and the young people are not very sure if they want to get married or not. But that's because of different reasons. We are living in very different times. There's a lot of information out there about relationships, about what a healthy relationship looks like and what an unhealthy relationship looks like. So one, we're seeing more young people are becoming more aware. They're becoming more aware of what they want and what they don't want. And likely this is informed by what they saw growing up or their family dynamics. Also, we are seeing more young people becoming more intentional when it comes to choosing partners. So there's a high level of awareness in terms of that. The emotional patterns. But on the other hand, there's also the fear of choosing a wrong partner.
Wow.
So we've become so critical. And everyone is in a position where I don't want to find myself having or choosing the wrong partner. So we are very, very hyper vigilant, such that the moment we spot any, what we call red flag, someone is out, So
Yeah.
there are several reasons, including, some of that you
And
mentioned.
I wouldn't blame young people because divorce is high globally, but even in Kenya, the rate of divorce is higher. We may not be as high as, I understand it's about 1 in 5 marriages end up in divorce. But in countries like the US, I understand approximately 2 in 5 end up in divorce. But this is a concern. I believe this is a concern for young people. What do you think? The issues of watching their parents,
There's
maybe.
obviously that where, as I was saying, the fact that more young people are becoming more aware and more intentional,
Yes.
but also they're drawing from what they saw. They're drawing from the environment, they're drawing from how they see their parents or older people or people around them interacting. And so they're using that as a template to also make decisions when it comes to, say, long-term relationships. But also, let's not underestimate things like economic reality. And right now, economic reality is also coming in as one of the aspects that shapes or influences whether someone wants to be in a long-term relationship or not. So that is that. But also we see lately or nowadays, marriage or long-term relationships are no longer a default. Previously, in the past years, marriage was an expectation.
Yes.
And that's why we have the stigma surrounding things like singlehood, being unmarried. But right now, we're seeing marriage as optional. Or it's coming out clearly that marriage is no longer. It's a choice. And so more people are actually starting to entertain the idea of how does it look like if I am single and if I am married, of course, influenced by also other personal factors.
Yeah, that's worrying because you see, many of our young people are not getting married, and we need Kenyans to expand in population. We need children, grandchildren, people who will take over running our nation. So what hope is there for the future if we have so many young guys, they're not getting married?
Well, I think, Doc, we need to acknowledge, and this is a reality,
It's a reality.
and it's here with us. We
Yes.
cannot run away from it.
Yes.
We need to acknowledge the fact that people's priorities have now changed. We are seeing people prioritizing certain things, and many a times marriage does not even make it to top 3. For different reasons. There are people, who are prioritizing their education. Some, they're prioritizing, their careers. And so the priorities have shifted right now. And somewhat, while marriage could be there, likely it's not a priority, or it's not among the first.
Yeah, so now we are back to the topic of the difference between love and infatuation, because maybe a lot of the young people are infatuated, but what is love? How do you know that you're in love with somebody and not just infatuated? Yeah.
Wow. So love, ideally, at the beginning, let's talk about how love looks like at the early stages. Obviously, early on, love starts with affection, attraction to someone. Over time, it can change. The feelings can change. However, the fact that you decide to actually still be with this person, regardless of whether because of the mood changes, of certain stressful situations, or maybe their weaknesses, then it graduates to what we can maybe infer to as a choice, So while it begins with feelings over time, and attraction and connection, it graduates, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with humans. So they're bound to fall short of certain things, either because of your mood, stressful life circumstances. And so the intensity might not always be the same as you progress in the relationship. However, infatuation, on the other hand, has everything to do with very strong emotions that sometimes are even very confusing, and they cause what we call unhealthy attachment. Why?
Yeah.
Because of fear. So infatuation is driven more from the perception or idealizing someone based on how they look or what they do. And so the idea of them is what now sticks in our head, to a point where if this person now wants to leave, then it becomes very hard for us to let go. So you end up not loving the person for who they are, but the idea of this person.
Okay, so it looks like infatuation is more temporary, and it may not be a permanent, based on any permanent foundation, and it's very superficial.
Right.
Yeah. Like you just see somebody, your heart, you're already sweating, your heart is beating fast.
Yeah.
You dream about them night and day, then you want to be with them.
That's true. But also with infatuation, it tends to lean more towards what is familiar instead of what is healthy.
What is healthy?
Yes, what is more familiar. So you're drawn to a person based on certain feelings that they elicit inside you. Ideally, what is familiar, even if they're not very good for you. And this, as we've said, it circles back to our formative years, because that is the blueprint of, the foundation of our emotions and emotional patterns.
Why are you attracted to this person? And really, this could be the statistics which is giving rise to a lot of depression and suicide in young people who, because of relational problems, they want to commit suicide. Because of a disagreement with their spouse, they are depressed. So infatuation could be a key factor in that. A lot of people are infatuated. Yeah.
Or we can say, unhealthy attachment.
Unhealthy
attachment. So with infatuation is always anxiety based, such that there's some sense of dependence on someone, which is not very healthy.
An abnormal dependency.
Yes, an abnormal dependency.
Like
And
people say, you're my chapo, oh, you're my cake, oh, you're my hotel.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. So with
Okay.
infatuation, it's as I was saying, it's anxiety based, and it comes from an unhealthy place because of that emotional dependence on someone. And when there's emotional dependence on someone, Doc, it triggers a fear of abandonment, such that when someone does something wrong to you, or when they, go against your values, likely you're gonna prioritize connection over repair. So you're going to lean in more. Why? Because you're afraid of this person walking out of your life, regardless of what they are doing to you.
So we're gonna have a break after this, but in the second part, you're gonna tell us what advice do you give young people who, in terms of the way, when they want to make permanent relationships. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So I think we shall have a break now, and then we'll be back. Thank you.
Nimetoka mbali lakini kwa imani, God is good, ameniwezesha kwani maadui amenyamazisha. God is good, ameniwezesha kwani maadui amenyamazisha.
Ina masepedo chakora kwenye vita amenilinda, anatumisha ushindi wangu katikati ya maadui endo ngao yangu.
Welcome back from the break. Now, can you give us tips on how do you tell when somebody is infatuated with you, or you are infatuated with somebody and not love?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the infatuation and love?
And love. So basically, how can you tell you're infatuated and not in love?
Yes.
One, infatuation moves very fast. It is rushed. So it happens very quickly. It doesn't give you time to actually get to know someone better. And also you might find yourself consistently thinking about this person. They're consuming a larger part in your head. And also there's a lot of idealization that goes on with infatuation. You may find yourself putting someone on a pedestal or, idealizing them. And so it prevents you from actually seeing this person for truly who they are.
Yes.
And then infatuation is also very unstable and intense. There's a lot of anxiety around infatuation. So the feelings, you might find yourself going through so many mixed emotions in a very short period of time, And there's also the fear of losing that person, And this is mainly shaped by the fact that, you probably became easily attached to this person or prematurely attached to this person. Because of that. So you find that you're afraid of this person walking away from you, or just that fear of abandonment. And so the more you move within that dynamic, basically, the more you realize you're more preoccupied with the idea of who this person is and not actually who they are.
And you miss the red flags.
Absolutely.
So from what I gather is that it can be temporary because it may not be, it's more superficial. And may not stay long, or I've seen some people who are infatuated, but later on they fell in love and they got married.
Yeah.
Okay. What about love? How do you know that this is now the person I want to marry? This is not just infatuation. This is someone I'm in love and he loves me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is he going to demonstrate?
I think one of the things we tend to overlook is the nervous system, Doc. And you and I know that better.
Yes.
The nervous system will always inform you or warn you when something is not right. Right? And with love, it will always manifest through your nervous system. It is steady, it is grounded, it is calm, it takes time to grow. So it develops
with time.
gradually or with time. And also with love, you feel emotionally safe. You're able to be yourself. You don't find yourself walking on eggshells. You're not afraid to express yourself. You're not afraid to have differing opinions. Or you're not afraid your partner will stop talking to you because, you raised an issue or a concern. So there's an aspect of emotional safety when it comes to love. And also, love is consistent, where their actions match their words.
Their words, yes.
They're not just saying something, but there's some form of follow through. And also, you feel secure and not anxious.
So there's somebody who cares for you,
Right.
who respects you.
Right. They make you feel secure,
yes.
and not anxious.
Yes.
And love is also mutual and balanced. It is not one-sided.
Okay.
It is balanced and it's mutual. So you're both feeding into and you're both pouring into each other, and not only one person, going through the emotional struggles and the other person is just relaxing. So those are some of the signs.
So you really, if you're going through an infatuation, you still need time to take time to know the person, right? So that you get into the phase of love.
Right.
And you have to know now this person, it's not just infatuation, it's love, right?
Right.
Yeah. And which is the best place where you decide to get married? Is it, or to marry? That's the phase of love, right?
Right. I think it depends with so many aspects. Different things, of course, inform why we decide or choose to get married.
Yes.
And while love is one of them, sometimes, Doc, you could love someone and you don't have the resources to raise a family.
Different reasons. You need to have resources. Where to
But
stay.
also, what does resources look like? Because you could be in love with someone, and you genuinely want to spend time and for the rest of your life with this person. But do you have the resources to raise a family?
Okay.
Right.
So viewers, it looks like being ready. Yeah.
So yes.
Loving somebody is necessary.
Does not equate to being ready for marriage.
But I heard you say one time that love is beautiful. You'll know it and you'll feel it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. It's a beautiful experience when you're loved.
So my desire, my dream is that more young people get married because they're not getting married. But again, resources, jobs. A lot of people don't have the
economic
jobs.
Aspect.
Economic aspect, very important. Oh, okay.
Right. Priorities, motives. Yeah. There's a lot that, of course, come to play. And maybe we can also talk about, what young people out there, can just familiarize themselves with. It's important that get to know yourself first before you decide to be with someone.
To go with somebody.
Yeah. So, get to understand yourself and your emotional patterns.
Yes. Do you have some key parting shots that you'd give? Maybe before that I could ask, there's just one question that somebody was asking. Does social media affect relationships? Yeah? Social media, does it affect relationships of young people?
Right. I think it does because social media is a platform that definitely will influence how we perceive or our perception about relationships. When you constantly spend time on social media, depending on the kind of content you're interacting with, likely it's gonna shift your mind a certain direction. And we also see that there's a lot of sensationalization on social media as far as, aspects like relationships are concerned. So through that, wherever you spend much of your time, you're building a habit.
Yes.
You're building a habit. And this habit can now graduate into even a behavior. So if you're consistently consuming content of, say, divorce, likely that's the seed that's going to be planted in your head. If you're consistently consuming content of happy couples, that is also the seed that's going to be planted in your head. So the kind of content we interact with definitely significantly shapes our view and perception of what love looks like, but also what relationships look like.
So there has to be a balance, viewers, from what I hear you say, that, don't be full-time on social media and expect to have a meaningful relationship with anybody, let alone not just your partner. Yeah.
Right.
What parting shot would you give the viewers? I think our time is over now. a few parting shots.
Yeah. Okay.
That you give the viewers.
Wow, the ending is always a bittersweet, but anything that has a beginning, of course, has to end.
3 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think what I can say is, we don't only let love not be also the only reason where or why we get into relationships. Also ask yourself, is that relationship healthy? Is it stable? Is it safe? Is it in line with who you are? Because many a times we don't fall in love, we fall into familiar patterns. And so get to understand yourself better so that you can be able to make informed choices.
So understand yourself better and know what you're getting into.
Right.
Because it's a lifetime. I mean, I'm just thinking, you get married, then within 1 or 2 years, like the Hollywood cases, there's divorce. How does the society look at divorce? You know, when you're divorced, then is it easy to marry again? What impact does it have on people?
Right. So, of course, culture definitely comes to play.
Yeah.
And culture is one of those pillars that obviously significantly shapes our perception of relationships or marriages or long-term relationships. And while there's culture, it's also important to have a sense of individuality and make your own decisions. Sometimes let us step away from what society expects and make decisions based solely on what our experiences are, so that you're not making a decision because someone else is doing it or an expectation, but ideally it should be informed by, what do you want going forward? Is that what you want for yourself in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
So you're talking of pressure. I'm getting a sense of like being pressured because of society expects you to get married. Is that the right thing? Okay. What are the parting shots?
Right. So ideally, understand your emotional patterns, because that is one of the drivers that make us also get into relationships. And when you understand your emotional patterns, you're able to be more in touch with your emotions. And when you're in touch with the emotions, you'll get to realize, what do you feel you're lacking? Because your partner might not fulfill those needs. And if you're getting into a relationship hoping your partner will fulfill your emotional needs, I'm sorry, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. So in psychotherapy, we call it, heal your wounds.
Heal your wounds
first. Heal your wounds first, so that you don't bleed on someone else.
Okay, wow, that's a good one. And many people have wounds. Yeah, almost everybody has a wound or so.
Yeah.
So self-reflection, self-healing.
Right.
Okay, so that's one. Another thing you like to add?
And also, what is it that you want for yourself? What are your values? It's important to have values. When you don't have values, you'll always fall for anything.
Okay.
And anyone.
Yeah.
We say, "Simanga bendera ufuata upepo." You will just be going with the flow. So your values should guide how you even interact with people, because it's through your values that you'll be able to decide, I don't want this for myself, or I want this for myself. So let us acknowledge what are our values, what are your non-negotiables also. Very important. And what are those things that you can compromise on? Because at the end of the day, also, relationships are not perfect, but somehow there need to be a balance. There need to be an understanding. And the only way that will come forth is when you have values. And through those values, then you're able to identify your non-negotiables and the things you can compromise.
So is it important, Delene, and that's important because it might be one of your parting shots, that a couple, if they want to go into a serious relationship, that they go for help, a relationship counselor or something? Because a lot of the time people, maybe you didn't have good parents or you didn't have parents who showed you the ideal way to respond to each other. And they just don't know how to handle relationship. So is there such a thing as relationship counselor or premarital sessions?
Obviously,
before?
Yes. There are several platforms that, offer relationship counseling, depending on the stage of your relationship. For example, we see, say like couples counseling when they want to get married.
Yeah,
but
couple counseling.
Yes, but even as you get to know each other, get to understand your partner's background, so that it gives you an opportunity to know what you're getting yourself into. To understand your partner's background, not to discriminate, but for you to extend understanding. Because when there's awareness, then there's better choices. And particularly if both of you are willing to work through some of the issues that are keeping you stuck in the relationship, there's better understanding.
Yeah, they say that you've got to understand your partners, especially their parents, their families, how they react with, how they interact with their families, how they handle their parents,
How they deal with
how they
conflict.
be friends, how they deal with conflict, before you finally make a decision that this is a journey,
Yeah.
a lifetime journey.
Absolutely.
Of,
And that's why,
yes.
that's why I emphasize on the data collection period. Take your time to get to know someone,
Yes.
so that after some time, when you notice certain inconsistencies, use that as information to decide, do I want to still progress with this relationship?
There's some people who say, I know you're still in the parting shot phase, that I'll change him. Yes, he's a drunkard, but when I marry this guy, I'll change him.
Yeah.
Does it really work? Is it practical? In many cases, for the cases you see.
Well, many times that comes from a point of projection where you feel like, that is what you would have done if you were in that person's shoes. But also, it's because you're seeking to fulfill a certain need. There's that savior or hero complex that is inside, that you feel like, maybe if I just change this person, they're gonna be perfect for me. Probably they have all other areas that I feel are good, but there's only one aspect we need to deal with. Most of the time that comes from an emotional wound. And so every opportunity you get, or you meet someone who does not probably fit ideally what you do, and you take it as a chance for you to prove that I can make this person different, which many a times does not really happen, because it is a personal journey, and you cannot walk that journey for someone else. You can only support, but you cannot walk the journey for them.
And I hear chances are, once you get married, the tendency is that things get worse. If it's somebody's weak character, it tends to get worse. Yeah. But anyway, we don't want to scare people, and there are many successful stories and marriages. Yeah.
Right.
So I think you have finalized any other last parting shot?
Last of the last.
Last of the last.
Choose peace over pressure.
Wow.
Choose peace over pressure.
And again, we depend on God. Yeah. Choose also prayer, because he can then guide you to the right partner. So thank you very much, Delene.
Thank you, Dr.
And I know we'll call you back again another time.
Sure.
And thank you, viewers. Please watch Delene's earlier podcast on social media and mental health. And it's very informative. It will give you information that builds on also this particular podcast. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.